D2L's Grades tool features a powerful gradebook that stores, calculates, and displays student grades to you and your students. In order to start using the gradebook, you need to decide how it works. In other videos, you'll find more in-depth discussion of features and tools within the grades area, but in this video, I run through the basic options for global settings within grades to get you started. In D2L's Grades toolset, there are settings which govern or set defaults for how grades are calculated and displayed. At any time, you can modify those settings by clicking the Settings link in the upper right-hand corner of the Grades area. If you're building a gradebook for the first time, it's helpful to run the Setup Wizard. You can run it by clicking the link towards the top. Within a course space, if you've never done anything with the Grades area, and if you haven't imported a previous semester's gradebook, the first time you click Grades on the nav bar, you'll be directed automatically to the Setup Wizard. The first page of the wizard just has a summary of the options that are ahead. Let's start making those choices. I click the blue Start button at the bottom. On the next page, you choose how your gradebook will calculate. A weighted gradebook calculates student scores based on their mathematical weight relative to one another, either as individual items or as groups of grade items called categories. A points-based gradebook is simpler. Students earn points, adding up to a score compared with the denominator, which can be any number. At any time in the course, a student need only add up her total points and compare that with the total points possible in the class to that date. On the next page, we choose calculated versus adjusted final grade. Calculated simply produces a final score based on items and categories you create that are shown to students by default. Adjusted gives you an additional entry box that effectively enables you to add additional points unrelated to grade items that your students see. This also means D2L cannot show them a running total grade score for the class, at least until you've added something to the adjusted final grade box or column. In this case, I'll choose calculated final grade. I'll also choose automatically release final grade. This means that D2L will publish a running total score for students throughout the semester, provided two things. One, I've chosen calculated final grade, and two, I have to enter some sort of grade data into my gradebook for this running final grade to appear to students. I'll click Continue. On the next page, I choose whether D2L leaves ungraded items out of the current grade calculation or treats them as zero. The former is simpler. If you leave a grade item entry blank for a given student, then that item does not count in calculating the student's grade. This means you must add a zero where a zero is in fact the appropriate grade. The latter option automatically treats all ungraded items as a zero grade, which means students have to do additional math to calculate their current grade. And I always leave automatically keep final grade updated so that the final grade column that I see or that's available to students is current with the scores that I've entered into my gradebook. I click Continue. Next, we pick a grade scheme. By default, D2L uses the percentage scheme, which makes available a percentage equivalent to any grade. Also available in every course is a letter grade scheme. Additionally, you can build your own grade schemes if you'd like. I'll leave it at percentage. On the next page, I decide how many decimal places D2L will display in a grade score to me. For example, if I enter 0 in this box, D2L will round any score in my gradebook to the nearest whole number. But note that D2L will still calculate decimal grades, so what I see in my gradebook may not accord with calculations. To avoid confusion, it's often best just to leave the default 2 decimal places for grade scores. Click Continue. Here, I choose what my students see in their individual grade report. For points-based gradebooks, points is ideal, and that's usually what I choose. Grade scheme symbol is determined by the grade scheme I chose in a previous screen. I left this gradebook using percentage as my scheme, so it will calculate percentages and display them alongside the points grades. Grade color displays shades of blue, green, yellow, or red, depending on the score. Again, I choose how many decimal places to display. I usually leave that at 2 for the reasons I mentioned previously. Display final grade calculation to users. In most gradebooks that professors build, this feature is redundant, and it only operates if you release to your students a running calculated grade anyway. So I usually just leave it unchecked, so it keeps the screens visible to students simpler. Click Continue. And D2L lets me review the settings for this gradebook. And I'll click Finish, and my gradebook is ready for me to begin to start building individual items and categories of items. And for that, I go to Manage Grades. If you import a previous semester's gradebook, know that this includes all settings as well as categories or items you created in that gradebook. So if you're using the same gradebook for several semesters, even with occasional modifications, you won't have to set it up like this each time. Imported gradebooks do not include previous semester's enrolled students or their grades. Instead, you'll see the students enrolled in this section, and their grades will be blank. In this video, I haven't touched upon every possible feature that you can choose in global grade settings, but I've discussed those that will safely get you started using the grades toolset in D2L.